teaching that is brought down in this published book that they published, that was recently published, the teachings of the Maggid of Mezrich, a student of the Baal Shem Tov, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe. And in this book, it's called Dibros HaMaggid. It's also found, this incidentally is also found in other books of the Maggid, like Maggid Vel Yaakov. It's a conversation, seems to be a question and answer between the Badichever, Levi Yitzchak Badichev, the Heilige Badichever, and his teacher, his master, the Maggid of Mezrich. So there are small little entries where the student asks a question and the teacher answers. The Chassid asks a question and the Rebbe answers. So the question is, Sha'alti, that I asked a question from my teacher, my Neinu Marina Rabbeinu, from my master and my teacher. What is Olam Shana Nefesh? What is, it seems like the Berditchever is writing these shilas, which shows these question and answers. And he asked his teachers, asked the Maggid, what is the idea of time or space, time, and consciousness? Asham, Olam Shana Nefesh. That we know that everything in this world is a composite of these three elements. Everything occurs within a particular time, in a particular space, with an observer, a consciousness that's observing the experience. So what does that mean? What is the depth? Vishli, and he answered me like this: that Olam, space, world, is connected to Ibur, impregnation. Shana, time, is connected to Yanika, to the state after impregnation, where the child is born, the fetus is born and becomes an independent being, and then suckles on his mother's milk. So Yanika, suckling, that's child being weaned on his mother's milk. And nefesh, the idea of nefesh, of consciousness, is moichin de gadlus, is expansive mind. Now we know that from the teachings of the Ari and teachings of Chassidus, that the process from Pesach to Shavuos is, and so Pesach means the going out of Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt, going out of constriction, and getting to Matan Torah, to receiving the Torah, the 51st day later, on Matan Torah. And Shavuos is the idea of moving from Ibur, impregnation, to Moichin. And of course, the highest level of Moichin, of intelligence, will eventually be at 40 years after the desert, where Aboim Shana, after 40 years, coming Shadai to the Rabbi. After 40 years, a person finally absorbs the teaching of his teacher. So there's 3 stages. That Klal Yisrael, the people of Israel, are born by the going out of Egypt. The going out of Egypt represents the birth of Klal Yisrael. Lakachtam goy mekarev goy is the ki'ibur bitna shel imoy. That Klal Yisrael is birthed in the time of going out of Egypt. The going out of Egypt is the birth of the people of Israel, birth into the world of the miraculous, into Nisim. And we become a people, but we're sort of like a child still absorbed within its mother. So therefore, the Korban Pesach, and then finally born. The Korban Pesach, the offering of Pesach, which is we do to initiate the story of Pesach. We bring the offering of Pesach before Pesach, in times of the Beis Hamikdash, or maybe even times that Klal Yisrael has control over the Har Habayis, and people live in it in Yerushalayim. That the idea of bringing the Korban Pesach, the offering of Pesach, and the way it's brought, is that it's brought on the 14th day and then eaten by night, on the night of Pesach, which is the birth of Klal Yisrael. And the way that the animal, the way the lamb and the sheep is offered, or is roasted, is that Rosh Ben Birkov, the head is between its knees, which is symbolic, like the Tzemach Tzedek writes, is symbolic of the idea of a fetus in his mother's womb. So the going out of Mitzrayim represents the state where we're still like a fetus within our mother's womb. And then there's the birthing of Klal Yisrael, and we're born as we leave Egypt. That's the first step. The second step is when we're in a state of Yanika, where we don't yet have full independence. We're born as a people, but we don't have full independence. We don't have intelligence on our own. We're being inspired by our teacher, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe represents the mother, and he actually says this later that he's in the Torah. He says that it's like a mother carrying a yonik, a child, an infant that is a suckling. So in the process of being in the midbar, in the desert, we were like a suckling, receiving nourishment like from mother's milk, and that's why we receive mun. The manna represents the idea of a mother's milk, and that's why it comes. The Gemara says Tainis comes from the schus and the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore, like the mother's milk. The Gemara says that it's like the bosom of a mother, that it gives all different types of tastes, which is the idea of the man. And then finally, we reach a point where we have intelligence and we're standing on our own 2 feet. That's the idea of Moichet. And that's the general process from Pesach, which is Ibor, the birth, and then the counting of the Omer, which is the process of Yanika, and then finally is Moichin, is Matan Torah. This is at a microcosm level, and then at a more macro level, this also occurs throughout the story of the 40 years in the desert. This is something that we've explored a few times, and it's written about in the book of Nisan, the book of Iyar, and the book of Sivan, this idea of the Ibor, Yanika, Moichin, these 3 processes. But what's interesting about this teaching from the Maggid is that the Maggid ties these 3 ideas of pregnation and suckling and intelligence, Ibor Yanika Moichin, to Olam Shana Nefesh, to time, to space, time, and consciousness, which would mean, being that we're in the time period from Pesach to Shavuos, and we're entering into Rosh Chodesh soon, entering in the month of Sivan, where we finally camped in front of the mountain, like one people. So the idea of Ibor Yanika Moichin, which is the impregnation and the suckling and the intelligence, the 3 stages of growth, which is the 3 stages of every type of growth. When anything is becoming independent and becoming its a thing, it's emerging as itself. It goes through these 3 stages. First, it's emerged within the creator. Then it finally becomes an independent thing, somewhat detached from the creator, but needing its creator to constantly sustain it. And then it finally reaches its own level of intelligence and becomes an independent thing. That's 3 stages. So this is where this process works within all of life. And now we can also understand that this also works in terms of Olam Shana Nefesh, as space, time, and consciousness, which will be related to this time period of Pesach, which will be related to the world of space, Olam, and then Sphere will be connected to the world of time. And then in the Mirza Hashem, when we get to Shavuos, we'll get to the world of Nefesh, of consciousness, where we had an experience of Anoich Hashem Alekecha, that we experienced the oneness of Hashem in our soul. So Pesach is connected to the world to the idea of space. Therefore, we see that on Pesach, it's very important that we have to, when we brought an offering, this should be celebized. It should be, every home should have an offering to the house. Therefore, even the children eat and are included within the midst of Korban Pesach and being as part of the celebized. Like Chaim writes, that idea is that part of the celebized, part of each home has this offering. So much so that there's even a prohibition, which is space, the epitome of the idea of space. It's our space. We carved out the space. This idea of eating the Korban Pesach, offering your Pesach with a chabur, with a group of people, and you have to be menuyim. You have to be counted amongst this chabur, amongst these people. And there's an isur itzah, and you're not allowed to take any of the offering of the Pesach and move it into another place. It has to be in its location where people are going to eat it, where the people that are dedicated to eat that offering are dedicated, will eat that offering, and cannot move from one place to the next. So we see that Pesach is very much connected about space. Even today, when we don't have the Korban Pesach, we don't have offering or Pesach, one of the most dominant Yom Tovs throughout the year that we celebrate with our family in our homes, very much a family thing, together with all the children, with the Echad Chacham, Echad Rosh, with all the types of our children sitting together around in a family together in our home. That's the idea of Pesach. So Pesach is connected to space. Therefore, we also understand that very clearly that the time of Sphira, which is that we're counting the days of the Sphira, which we count from the second day of Pesach, we count every single day the Sphira. So I'm counting the Omer, the counting of this from that offering that was offered, the Omer offering, and we count 49 to the 50th day. It's a time of counting. It's the only time of the year that we're counting, and we're counting every single day. Today is the first day of Omer, the second day of Omer, and every single day we're counting. It's almost like a countdown or a counting up until we get to the Yom Tov of Shavuos. So the Spheres Omer is connected to Zman, just like Pesach is connected to space, to Olam. The same also Spheres Omer is very much connected to the world of Zman. And then Shavuos will be connected to the world of Nefesh, and therefore Shavuos is beyond time and space, which means that Shavuos doesn't have a particular location where it occurred, even though it happened at Mount Sinai. But we say that the place is not that the place was not transformed because it's beyond any space, and it's b'makam midbar. We receive the Torah, like the Medrash says, makam in the place of the desert, because of makam hefker. It's a place that's ownerless, that's spaceless, so to speak. It's also the idea that it doesn't have a time. Therefore, Shavuos, the Torah doesn't describe exactly when Shavuos, what day in the month it should be, and therefore there's an argument whether it's the 6th day or the 7th day of the month. But Shavuos is beyond time, beyond space, because it's really occurring within the world of nefesh, within the world of our souls. So let's think about the idea of time, because that's the time period. This is the period that we're talking about now during the days of Sphira, during the days of the counting of the Omer, which is the idea connected of time. So we see different structures of time in the Torah itself. The first structure that the Torah gives us is time, because time can be perceived linearly, can be perceived cyclically, it can be perceived that it's spirally, which is the correct understanding of time, that it's both a hybrid between cyclical nature of things repeating itself, but every year going on a higher level linearly, which means the arc of history, the arc of movement of time is always moving forward. But in the structure of time itself, in terms of how do we measure time, so we find in the Torah itself different ways how we can measure time. The first thing that the Torah speaks about time, the first time the Torah speaks about time, and really the creation of time is really the first word, Bereshis, which is brought down the name of the Baal Shem Tov, is also brought down the name of the Maggid of Medrash, is also brought down the same idea, teaching originally in the name of the teaching of the Alter Rebbe. The Gra also brings us down that the word Bereshis is the beginning of time. Time was created. Bereshis means time. And what does the Torah describe time? How does the Torah describe time? The Torah describes time that there is a construct called a week. There's this. Hashem creates the world in 6 days. And then the 7th day, Hashem rests. So there's a construct of a 7-day week. This idea of a 7-day week has no physical manifestations. It doesn't represent any type of cycle of the moon or cycle of the sun. It's not an inherent anything to do with any of the planetary movements. It's essentially the Torah saying, it's a Torah reality. The idea of a week. Now, you could say the reason for the week is to divide a month, which is part of a lunar cycle, 28, 29 days. Part of a lunar cycle is divided into 4, so you have 7 days a week. But you can divide it into 2. You can have 14-day weeks, or you can have 10-day weeks, or you can have no weeks at all. The whole idea of a construct of a week is sort of a fabricated idea, fabricated within nature. It's not replicated, and it's not inherent within nature. And that's why there were some ancient cultures that didn't have weeks or had 9-day weeks or 10-day weeks, because weeks is almost arbitrary. Yet, fascinatingly, throughout the entire world, there is no place on the planet today, in the civilized world, the known world, the civilized world, where people don't keep weeks, and they don't keep a 7-day week. And why do people keep 7 days a week, whether they're living in Mongolia or in the midst of Africa? Why do people keep a 7-day week? Because the Torah says that there's a 7-day week. The Or Chaim HaKadosh writes, and it's brought down many Sfarim, that the idea of the 7 days of creation, the 7 days of the process of this concept called a week, is not something that only happens once, but every single week is a new revealing of a Sunday quality and a Monday quality and a Tuesday quality, and it has particular qualities connected to the spheres of Chesed and Gvur and Tiferes. Every single day has its own quality, and every day and every single week it's a repetition. There's a kiloi, and there's an expiration of the creation at the end of the week, that everything is absorbed inwardly on the day of Shabbos, and then Sunday is a new emergence of a new creation of a new week. So the construct of a week is Torani, is a Torah-based reality. Therefore, Shabbos and the structure of weeks is Mekadosh Shabbos. Hashem sanctifies time. It's not about us sanctifying time. We don't create the weeks. Weeks are gifted to us. It was given to us. It's a divine mandate. Weeks is a divine construct. The entire structure of weeks. That's the first measurement of time, how we measure time as weeks. So weeks is Hashem's, and therefore it's the world's, but it's a gift. It's matanachas. It's one gift it's a gift that Hashem gave the world. The idea of weeks, to celebrate Shabbos. The idea of a structure of a week. Then there is two systems that affect people living in this planet Earth. One is the solar, and one is the lunar cycle and the solar cycle. Now, these are natural phenomena, which means they're phenomena that are observed. They're empirical. We can observe this. There's an empirical cycle, lunar cycle, which the lunar cycle creates months. So the creation of months is sort of a natural phenomena, and whether we participate or we observe or not, this is a natural event. And the same thing also the solar cycle. There's a solar cycle and a lunar cycle. They're 11 days off, but this is the solar cycle and the lunar cycle. And there are different calendars that count the solar cycle, and there are certain calendars that count only the lunar cycle. The Torah calendar that we have is sort of a hybrid between these two, which is a synthesis between Esav and Yishmael, which is a synthesis between these two ideas, which is between the solar calendar and a lunar calendar. And therefore, we create years based also on the months and the consistency of seeing the new moon. What is the power that is given to us in relationship to, for example, the lunar calendar, the idea of the months, is that the first mitzvah of the Torah, the first mitzvah that was given to Klal Yisrael, was Achodesh Hazalachem, to sanctify the new moon, which the Ramban says is the first mitzvah in the Torah, which is also clear that the first mitzvah that we received in Egypt as a people was the mitzvah of Achodesh Hazalachem. What is the mitzvah of Achodesh Hazalachem? What is the mitzvah of sanctifying the moon? To sanctify the idea of sanctifying the moon is that we're taking an event that has a natural rhythm, that has an empirical, observable cycle, and we're saying that in this cycle itself, Hashem says, I want you to participate and to sanctify that cycle. So much so will the power of the sanctification of the new moon be in your hands, Azalachem, I'm giving it over to you, is that that it becomes the power of the Bezin, of the high courts, to sanctify the new moon. Now today we have already structured calendars, already defined calendars, but in more ancient times when they literally sanctified the new moon by two witnesses coming and saying that they saw the new moon in the beginning of the new month. They came to the high court, they came to the Bezin HaGadol. So this idea was that the courts, the Bezin has the power to sanctify this new moon. So if they see the new moon and they say today is Rosh Chodesh, today becomes Rosh Chodesh, today becomes the first day of the new month. If they don't, then automatically the next day becomes Rosh Chodesh. So when is Rosh Chodesh? When is going to be Rosh Chodesh? Even though it's a natural phenomenon, and the moon will be seen, possibly be seen, maybe no one actually physically sees it, but it can possibly be seen on the first day. If no one comes, or two witnesses don't show up to Bezin and sanctify the new moon in front of the courts and say Mekudesh, 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 and they test them and see that they saw correctly, saw the new moon, then it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's not the day of Rosh Chodesh. So what the power of Rosh Chodesh is, the power of the cycle is that it's a natural phenomenon and it's given over to us, to the Bezin, to Klal Yisrael. So much so that there's Midrashim and there's a Yerushalmi in Rosh Hashanah that says that the angels on high say, what day is Rosh Hashanah? Because we don't know, because it could be the first of the new month of Rosh Hashanah is the first of the month of Tishrei. It could be this day if the moon was seen, or if it's not, then it's the next day. And Hashem says you have to go to the Bezin, for the courts below, to see what they said. If they sanctify the new moon, that's Rosh Chodesh. And then the famous Yerushalmi that says that that it's possible even to retroactively transform a person from being 3 years old to 2 years and 1 day short of 3 years old. So this idea of that the power to sanctify time. So again, there's the cycle of the seven, which is the cycle of time that is divine time, Hashem's time. And then there's a cycle where there's the natural time, and our connection to that idea is that we have to sanctify the new moon. And then comes along even something that's even deeper, and that's the idea of Sfiras Omer. Sfiras Omer is even deeper than that. In Sfiras Omer, we're counting to get to the level of 50. Tisbro Chamishim Yom. The Torah says you should count 50 days. We count only 49, but it's the count to get to that shleimus, that perfection of getting to the place of 50. There's a parallel to this idea where structures of 7 reach to 50 in years as well. There's the idea of the Shemitah years, the 7 Shemitahs, 7 years of Shemitah, the 6 years that we work the land, the 7th year is the year that we lay rest to the land, and we let the land lay fallow. And then there's seven cycles of 49, and on the 49th year is the last year, as Shemitah for the previous 6 years, and then on the 50th year is the Jubilee year, the Yovel year, where everything returns back to its source, and everything, and slaves are redeemed, and everything that was sold goes back to its original owner, etc., etc., with many laws. This is the 50th year. Now, there's an argument among the Rishonim, in the early commentaries, and the Rambam holds that the Rambam writes, just like there's a mitzvah on the Yachid, on the individual, to count Sfiras Omer individually, Minatayim, Darbana today, but there's a mitzvah to count every single day. And that's the argument if it's Minatayim or Darbana. Most say that it's Darbana, it's only for the sages today. But the idea is to count. There's a mitzvah to count. The same thing was the mitzvah on the Bezin. There's a mitzvah on the high courts that they also have to count. They have to count. But what do they have to count? They don't count year 1, 2, 3, and 4 and then count the 7. They count the 7 cycles. They count the 7 Shemitahs to count to the 50. So there's not a, this is the Rambam. There's other Rishonim say it differently, but this is the Rambam's opinion, that they count is the counting of the 7 to get to the number 50. So we have the structure inherent within nature, which is the solar cycle and the lunar cycle, and our capacity and responsibility and obligation, and really invitation, to participate in this unfolding and to sanctify time. And then there's divine time, which is Mekadosh HaShabbos, not Mekadosh Yisrael Vazmanim, not that Hashem sanctified us to create, to sanctify time, but Mekadosh HaShabbos, Hashem sanctified time, which is Shabbos, the 7 days of the week. And then there's a structure of the lunar and the solar cycle. And then there's a different type of structure, which is 7 times 7 to get to the number 50. So let's try to understand this a little bit, what this means. So there's an opinion of the Ramban, Nachmanides. The Ramban writes in Kiddushin, in the Mishnah talks about that women are not obligated on mitzvah shazman grama. Women are not obligated on mitzvahs, on commands that are time bound, and they're obligated on mitzvahs, on positive commands, but they're obligated mitzvah shalazman grama. That if it's not time bound, then they're obligated. The Ramban lists many different mitzvahs, and one of the things the Ramban says, for example, what's the mitzvah say shaloyazman grama? What's considered a mitzvah that is not time bound? So the Ramban says, for example, in the many examples that he brings, is Sfiras Omer, the counting of the Omer, which means according to the Ramban, counting the Omer is not time bound, and it's obligated also for women. There's a Zohar that says that women should not count the Omer, and it's actually dangerous. That's a whole other conversation. But the Ramban says that there is an obligation because it's not time bound. Now this is very puzzling. And many people ask this question. It's been asked many times. The Vicheskel, the Shinover, and others ask this famous question. And the question is, what do you mean it's not time bound? The Torah says that you should count the Omer from the day after Shabbos, which we know Shabbos is Pesach, Shabbos. So that idea is that Shabbos is the first day of Pesach. So from the second day of Pesach, we have to count the Omer. So it means that it's time bound from the second day of Pesach. You have to count 50 days. You have to count the days, mitzvah l'on yoma, mitzvah l'on shvuah, mitzvah to count the days, count the weeks, whether that's also today or not. That's machlokes. But the idea is that certainly in its highest level, in the correct time, there's a mitzvah to count both of them. And when do we count them? From the day after Pesach. So that's very much time bound. That's man grama. From the time of Pesach, you have to count. So what does the Ramban say? That it's as man grama. So there's different ways to understand it. And a deeper way to understand it based on the things that we've been talking about. And that's why Sfira is connected to Zman. We said that Pesach is connected to space, Sfira is connected to Zman. What this means that Sfira is connected to Zman, to time, is not only that it's connected to time, but Sfira, the idea of Sfira, is creating time. It's a new dimension. There is a dimension where we're sanctifying structures of time that's already inherent. So it's whether solar time or lunar time, which is structures inherent within the universe. It's astronomically true that this is what happens in this world, in the planet Earth, the way we observe. This is what happens. So therefore, the Torah says the month should be to you, which means that you to sanctify it. But then there's something different. which is not that we are sanctifying time, but we are creating time. So it's not mitzvah say shazman grama. It's not the mitzvah that the time causes the mitzvah to arise. Let's say the mitzvah of putting on tefillin. If you say that it's lav zman tefillin, that Laila's lav zman tefillin, that you shouldn't put on tefillin at night, or la'oisei yedecha, that you shouldn't put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So it's the weekdays or the days that arise and give rise to the mitzvah of putting on tefillin. Therefore, it's time bound. Then there's another way of thinking about the counting of the Omer. Not that it's time bound, but it's the idea is to create time. What this means in a very simple level is when we say today is, let's say, the fourth day of Sefira. You created that, because the reason why you're calling it the fourth day of Sefira is because you counted 3. And when you counted 3, you created that today is the third day of Sefira. And when you count the number 4, you're creating that today is the fourth day of Sefira. Let's say theoretically a person crosses an international date line. This is the opinion of the Rebbe. That a person crosses the international date line. You would have one person, let's say, if you skip a day, which means you cross the international date line, instead of now landing in Australia, instead of being Tuesday, it's now going to be Wednesday. Let's, for example. So if it's Tuesday and you counted on Monday, you counted, let's say, day 3. So you would count now, if it's for you, it's Tuesday, you would count 4. But if you're in a place where you cross the international date line, which already today is not Tuesday, but today is Wednesday, they will count it today as 5. So you could be sitting in Shul and counting Sfiras Omer, counting the Omer, and you could say today is the 4th day of Omer, and the person right next to you will say today is the 5th day of Omer. So which day is it? Well, that depends on who's counting. The person that was counting from day 1 in the other side of the international date line, which is, by the way, a whole other conversation, because that's arbitrary. There's no actually real international date line, according to most opinions. The Balamor and there's a Kusri. There's a big conversation about that. But the idea is that one person says today is Tuesday to me, and I'm counting today is Wednesday to me, and therefore I'm counting as day 5. And the other person says, but to me, even though I missed Tuesday, but I only counted yesterday 3, so today is day 4 to me. So who created day 4 and who created day 5? The person, which means that we create time. The idea of Sfiras Omer is not time bound. It's not coming from time. It's the creation of time. We created today's 4. We created the day is 5. And this is a very, very empowering idea. Because on a halachic level, on a practical level, it means that we create the days of Sefira, and the mitzvah is given over to every single yachid. Just like the same thing, also the mitzvah of counting to the 50th, which is the mitzvah of the Jubilee year, the 50th year, is not inherent within nature itself. There's no structure within nature. Just like there's no weeks, certainly there's no 7 years. That's not a thing. The Torah makes it something, but it's not a thing in itself. It's nothing inherent within it. And then the Torah says, and every 7 you're going to count the 7 to get to the point of the 50, which is completely also unrelated to anything that's natural, inherent within some type of planetary movement or some type of movement inherent within the universe. But Hashem says, I want you to create this year, the 50th year, Bizman, that when all Klal Yisrael is going to be in Eretz Yisrael, I want you that you are going to create that this year is going to be the Jubilee year. It becomes a 50th. You're calling it the 50th year. And it has implications of what that 50th year means. So this is something that was given over to us, not only to sanctify time, but to create time. So this is the ability of counting Sfiras Omer. What does this mean on an inner level, on a more personal level, on a nafshistika level, something internal level? It means like this: that since we are given the power to create time, what this deeply means is that all of time, not just Sefira is just an indication of our power over time. That when we're connected to something that's beyond time and space, we have the power to create time, to create new dimensions of time. What that means, internally means, is that from one way of perceiving the world or perceiving ourselves, is that time is an inevitability, and the flow of time is inevitability. And therefore, a way to perceive the world is, or perceive ourselves in the world of time, is that whatever happened to me yesterday is inevitably going to affect my mood or my state of consciousness or the state of reality of who I am in this present moment. And the choices that I made yesterday is an effect really from the choices that I made previously and 2 days before. And maybe something started off many years ago and I took a certain turn in my life, and because of that, I'm living in the effects of that past. Owning time and creating time means we have the power at any moment to choose our life. And to choose our life means to say, despite the fact that these are the things that happened to me, and despite the fact that because these things, maybe these are very negative things that happened to me, and I was the victim of those events, and therefore I feel myself as a victim of those events. Maybe they're some type of traumatic experience or some type of drama that I had in my life, and I'm the effects of those things. And maybe they're self-perpetuated, or maybe they were inflicted to me through someone else. Either way, but I'm a victim to those circumstances. I'm a victim to those things that happened to me, and therefore I'm suffering because of the things that I did in my past or happened to me in my past in this present moment. What the Torah is saying is that you own time. And what that means that you own time is you can take a deep breath in this present moment and the freshness and the newness of this present moment and say, today is day number 1. Like Rabbeinu Yonah writes, Rabbeinu Yonah writes at the beginning of Shara Tshuva that one of the main idea of Tshuva, the main idea of Ein Va'ata Ela Tshuva, the Chazal say that Va'ata now is the power of Tshuva, the power to change. Because now says, I am not Loischus, that it's not my merit, I don't have any merits. And without chayva, that's what Rabbeinu Yonah writes. I don't look at my life as the effects because I did yesterday, therefore I have certain merits to myself. Or because I did something yesterday or 2 days ago, I have certain effects negatively and I have certain onuses that are inflicting me. Achshav, now, right now. Va'ati Yisrael ma Hashem shoyam le'imach. Va'ata, and now. Now is tshuva, the power to do tshuva. And the power to do tshuva means that if I choose to rise above and to be a creator of my existence, I can create my time. And the effects of creating my time will not only affect how I live from present, moment, future, but also will transform my past. Because the past is already over. It's finished. What I'm experiencing in the past is the effects of the past. The effects of the past is sort of like what the energy that is being that flows from the past into present. If I just in autopilot, I'm just receiving from my past. If I'm just receiving from my past, then I'm not making a conscious choice of it, and then I'm the victim of my past. But if I choose, this is the fascinating thing, the only choice that we have is always life. When the Torah says that I give in front of you life and death, you have to choose life. So everyone asks a question. Hashem is telling us, I give in front of you the choice. You can choose one way, you can choose the other way, but you should choose life. So then there's no choice. Hashem just said you should choose life. So of course we're going to choose life. But the answer to this question is, and this we have to think about this very deeply, is that in life we have two things that we can be. We can be in a place of choice or be in a place of the absence of choice. And the moment we make a choice, ubacharta, the only choice we have is b'chaim. Because if you don't, the absence of choice is to not choose. And to not choose means I'm just affecting my past. And when I'm affecting my past, it's negative. Because I'm just receiving of my past. So the moment I say to choose, if I choose my life at any moment, it's always l'chaim. L'chaim means to further, to make something better. And this is the power of owning time. That we shouldn't feel ourselves enslaved to time, or certainly not enslaved to space, but we should feel ourselves as the owner of time. And this is the perfect way to enter into the Yom Tov of Shavuos, to enter into the Holiday of Shavuos, the Matan Torah, which is, like we said before, is beyond time, beyond space, to really connect to something that's transcendent and beyond, and something that can be assimilated completely within. Hashem speaks to every individual person. To us, first we have to leave the limitations of time to say that we can own our time at any moment. We can choose, if we believe in this very moment, to choose our life from new. We can choose life. We can choose to be the creator of our life and not the victim of our life. We can choose not to be a non-chooser and to live reactively, but to live proactively and choose in this present moment. And then we're ready to receive the Torah, the higher world of Torah, which is the world of Nefesh. And Be'ez Hashem, when we get to Shavuos, we'll get to the place of really experiencing that we should recognize the oneness of Hashem fully. Have a wonderful week and Yom Tov.